Good evening or morning or whatever time of the day it happens to be.
Eva.
Still recording in temporary spaces because my office is too hot and animals are everywhere. Welcome one, welcome all to the Writer's Black podcast. I am your host, Greg Nyikos. This week I'm sitting down with author, literacy advocate, and did I forget to mention Super Bowl champion Malcolm Mitchell to talk about his latest picture book, My Super Duper Me. We'll discuss how he found a love for reading later in life, how he draws inspiration from his own story to craft his characters, and the footprint he wants to leave behind for his audience. The summer is absolutely decimating my town, my area, but I think more than anything else, my house. No central air, bad insulation, arguably no insulation in certain parts. So my office is still kind of inaccessible. So I've been recording in temporary spaces. So I apologize for the audio in this episode, on my end at least. Malcolm sounds great. True professional. It's going to be a great episode. If you're enjoying the Writer's Black podcast and want to help support the show, you can leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Review, comment, whatever it is you want to do to let us know that you think we're doing a good job or a bad job, even though you will hurt my feelings. But I understand. I get it. and anyway, follow along with us over on social media. We are at Writers Black Pod on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Keep up to date with all the news with the show coming back. We're still technically between seasons, but again, I don't have an off button, so we're just going to talk to some cool folks. And I guess when I decided season 3, it's season 3. But please follow on social media to get all the news about what we're doing. You can also send us an email if you want to get involved in the show for season 3. If you're a writer, if you know someone who is a writer, or you're just passionate about talking about literacy and literature and all the good squiggles that are on papers all over the land. I don't understand how I have normal conversations with people. That does happen sometimes, but this is certainly not one of them. Send an email to writersblackpod@gmail.com, and we'd love to set something up and just say hi, just hang out, just chat. So I guess without further incoherent rambling from me, let's get into today's episode of the podcast with Malcolm Mitchell.
Growing up, you struggled with reading because of some undiagnosed neurodivergence, and it wasn't until much later that you found a love for reading and ultimately writing in an incredibly unlikely place. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and the kind of discovering that passion for reading for the very first time?
Yeah, growing up, I loved to play sports, and I didn't spend much time thinking about anything else. I was able to go to college on an athletic scholarship. And while at the University of Georgia, I was granted more time to kind of challenge my notion and perspective of reading. And through a series of events, I realized that reading was the most self-empowering tool a person could possess. That while football was great, it has its limitations, and that reading is much more important. Once I realized this, I set out to be a better reader. But as you alluded to, it came with some challenges, and reading was very difficult for me. But I decided to take a very simple approach. I decided to practice reading as much as I practiced football, and over time, I got better.
Mind over matter thinking, like, was that like immediately effective, or is it one of those things you had to kind of discipline yourself and like, I'm gonna do this. We're gonna treat this as seriously as a sporting event.
It took time because anytime you're doing something new, you run against challenges. You run up against opposition, there are hurdles. I was dealing with inferiority complex, feeling dumb, less than, not on the same intellectual level as my peers. What sport taught me is that when you begin any process, it's not going to be great. But if you continue down that path over time, you get better. And I really leaned into that concept that I clearly understood, that if you continue to try, if you continue to practice, you'll be better than where you started. And with that in mind, things did begin to clear up. And once I understood the value of reading, that's a very important component. Once I understood the value of reading, I was able to overcome that initial hurdle. I'll give you an example. I did not like to lift weights, but on my pursuit to be a professional athlete, I lift weights. Well, why did I do that? Because I clearly understood the role that lifting weights would play into me becoming a professional athlete. Well, once I decided I wanted to be the best that I could be, and I understood that reading played a huge role in that, well, then no matter the challenges I face with acquiring the skill, I would persevere. And that's what my new book is really about. It's about this student, this child understanding that through reading, you can become the best you can be.
You have a very tremendous resume. You're a Super Bowl champion, and now you've made this very successful pivot into writing. With all the different genres and all the different audiences that you could write to and speak to, what was so enticing to you about writing for children?
Picture books played a huge part in my journey. I was around 18 or 19 when I concluded that reading was very important. And I really use picture books to build my vocabulary, understand sentence structure, and gain confidence as a reader. So that genre motivated me to being the best me. So when I decided to become an author, I really wanted to motivate young students that therefore they wouldn't wait so long to understand the importance of reading as I did. Because the sooner you grasp hold of this skill, the sooner you become a proficient reader, the better off you will be. I had sport that helped me. So I had more time to solve the problem, but that's not the status quo. That's not what typically happens. So I decided to focus on youth literacy because I wanted students to latch on to the importance of reading much sooner than I did.
I'm curious. You wrote your first book, The Magician's Hat, when you were still in college. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
That's correct.
So, what was the harder hit, I guess, to take? Was or the harder hits for you? Was it things like your ACL tear in 2013, or was it just the fight to get your first work published?
I answer the question differently than the way you posed it. The hardest thing was gaining confidence as a writer. I grew up in the South. I had never seen anyone like me in my community gravitate towards books. I had never seen anyone with my cultural background be depicted on the back of a book as an author. So this idea that this young black kid coming from this under-resourced environment could write books to inspire kids to read when he himself struggled to read was just so far-fetched. And I didn't believe that even though I wanted to be a writer, I could do it. That was the hardest part. Football injuries, by the time I got in college, it is what it is. But the intellectual challenge of overcoming imposter syndrome and the psychological barriers that were presented as a child, that was much more difficult. Once I realized reading was important, I could not forget that. And I could not let that go. And I wanted to tell as many students as I could because I did not want them to make the same mistakes I made or the same mistakes that I had seen.
It's a theme across all of your works, it seems. But my Super Duper Me, your latest work, is a great example of a story that is encouraging children to believe in themselves and realize that they have the power to shape their own future. And saying that in so clearly and so beautifully in a picture book in an art form, it is really something to be applauded. Is there ever, especially when working with artists and things like that, is there ever anything more you find maybe difficult about translating those messages into a message for that audience?
Well, anytime I work with an illustrator, I always tell them the primary responsibility of me as the author is to be authentic. So I always hold them accountable for whatever authentic relationship they have with the story that I have written. And in this case, it's a kid who did not always understand the importance of reading. And the illustrator came in and had a similar experience. So I asked her to lean into that. Do not shy away from her cultural background. Do not shy away from her cultural understandings, but to embrace it because that's how this story came about. It's me saying, hey, I didn't know this was important. I didn't know this had so much power. I didn't know that by believing in yourself, reading books, you could create this world that you never imagined to be true. I think that the most important thing of any artist to do is be authentic because it is those differences that we have through authenticity that bring out something new and creative.
And for this latest book, My Super Duper Me, can you give us a little bit of an elevator pitch about this story and what
Yeah.
inspired you to write this hopeful message for your readers?
Yeah, My Super Duper Me is the story about a kid named Theo. He's new at school and he's feeling less than. But there's a librarian who tells Theo that books are wings, that it will help us fly and be all that we can be. So this librarian introduced Theo to books throughout the story that empower him, motivate him, and help him understand that he has all that he needs. This story is very close to me because throughout my journey, I learned that every book that we read does grant us a new ability, a new skill to accomplish something that we could not before we read that book. So to me, books are superpowers. Every time you read one, you unlock the gift with a gift that's within you.
So Theo, your main character Theo, is such a relatable kid, learning to recognize his own strengths instead of comparing himself to others. As a child, did you see any of yourself in Theo? Did you draw from any personal experiences for him?
Yeah, most people assume because I was a athlete that I always felt embraced or I was a part of a group. And in some ways that's true, but in many ways that's not because you can be a part of a group and still feel isolated and as an outsider. And I think once I got into college and I decided to be a reader, it was an isolating experience because who runs around shouting they struggle to read? So, Theo starts off this first day of school, and that's symbiotic to my relationship with becoming a reader. I was alone until I was not. There were a group of people who came and encouraged and motivated me. And that's where the ideal of Mr. Burton comes along too, the librarian. Someone who is that inspiration, that motivator, the one that introduces you to the ideas of things in ways that you had never imagined before. So I think Theo and I have a lot in common. I think what we share most is understanding just how much books can do for you.
And you mentioned the character of Mr. Burton. He shares some wonderfully memorable lines throughout this book.
Yeah.
Are there any of those messages, especially that reflect on your own journey that have guided you throughout your life's
Yeah,
challenges?
I have the book right here. I want to actually read a few quotes that exist within the book, and I'll share what they mean to me. One is the world's greatest wonders refuse to conform. Why blend in when you are made to transform? I remember being in school just trying to fit in. Or if you look at social media platforms today, everyone's trying to copy someone else, but it's the unique differences that actually add value to society. So don't spend time trying to be like someone else or be like something else, but learn who you are and embrace that because that's what's truly special. Another line would be small is a whisper, waiting to roar. Every giant was once tiny before. Baby steps will take you a long way. Just never stop moving. Those are kind of lines that I live by, that I try to embody in everything that I do. Some days it's harder than others, but at the end of it all, I hope this book is inspirational, motivational, and those little lines can be taken out and used in a child's day-to-day life.
I think they can. I think it's you do a very good job at kind of relaying these messages in a way that everyone can appreciate. And while my Super Duper Me is a picture book themed, its themes are directed towards children, a lot of those messages of self-belief and confidence, they resonate beyond child. Have you been surprised by how many adults have connected with the story? And why do you think those messages are truly timeless?
Yes, because when I started off this journey as a reader and an advocate for literacy, I had no idea the literacy rates in the country. I assumed children struggled to read, but I had no idea that adults may have similar challenges. So I will say I was shocked and surprised once I started receiving messages from adults. It is humbling. It is something that I don't take for granted, but it does encourage me to continue to be vulnerable. Because what happens when you decide to be vulnerable, you give someone else permission to do the same. And it's through vulnerability that I think, overcome other challenges that we face. I had no idea when I started this journey that I would be connecting with adults as well, but I embrace it holistically, I mean, wholeheartedly. And if I can support anyone, I like to try to do so.
I think it's an admirable goal to aspire to. Well, Malcolm, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Where can our listeners and our viewers go to find more from you, find the book, see all the cool stuff that you're up to?
Yes, my Super Duper Me is available now. You can find it at your independent bookseller. You can also find it anywhere online. All you have to do is type in my Super Duper Me and it will pop up. And I hope that you'll order a copy. I hope you'll read the story and share it with others. If you want to learn more about me and the work that I'm doing, please go to readwithmalcom.com, just like it sounds. And I hope you will join me on this literacy journey.
Fantastic. I think everyone should. Malcom, thank you so much for joining us today.
All right. Thank you, my friend.